Hello and welcome back to The Inspired Attorney. I'm your host, Sharon V. And in part 2 of our conversation with Mitch Beinhaker, he tells us how he creates efficiencies in his practice. He also talks about the importance of finding your passion, even if it is outside of the law. And lastly, he shares with us 2 pieces of the best advice he's ever gotten. How do you address any concerns that people have by going on the cloud with data security?
Google has their own security and their own security policy. So I put that in my retainer letter. I have a data security, data privacy section of the retainer letter. Tell them this is where we store the data and it's protected here. And if you want a copy of their privacy policy, let me know. I don't do really any legal. We used to do work for medical practices, like patient appeals and things like that. I don't do that anymore. So we don't really have any HIPAA issues. We did in those days. And there's ways to make Google HIPAA compliant. I think if you don't sync it to your computer and it's only in the cloud, that makes it HIPAA compliant, I think. And I don't sync it to my computer anyway, but that's basically how I address. And I'm always, talking to different attorneys as to what they're doing from a data privacy issue. I wouldn't be surprised if most retainer letters do not address that issue, and they're backing up to the cloud or something. I would assume they're backing up to the cloud. I hope they are. We used to be all local in local drives and everything. And then Hurricane Sandy or something knocked us out for like 2 weeks. So like, we're not doing this again. And we moved everything to the cloud. And we were using on Microsoft. Microsoft has got more built-in compliant stuff for HIPAA and things like that. So yeah, that's how I address that stuff.
I think that's really good feedback. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your podcast. How did it come about that you created that?
Well, I told you I like podcasts, right? So about 2 years ago, I was listening to something and I heard, must have been one of the podcasts I was listening to. So there was a guy out in the Midwest his name was Mitch, actually, I remember. It's the Mitch Jackson podcast. And he had his own podcast. I have no idea what he even talks about because I really don't listen to, I'm sure it's some area of law or something. So I'm thinking, well, he must have a studio, he goes and he must have like a producer and he goes on the mic and all this stuff. So then I saw a video at one point, like, start your own podcast for $75. And I was like, you can do that? So I bought some cheap equipment. I didn't have to ask my partners, like, can I spend $75? Bought the equipment, got set up, and you can hear the difference in the sound quality of the early days to now, because now we're 50 episodes in. I'm 50 episodes in. And I realized that we could do it on our own. So then we started figuring out, like, well, should we do it on like legal topics? You get a speeding ticket or you got to sue somebody, it's super expensive to hire a lawyer. Somebody told me that was boring. And they're like, yeah, I heard your podcast is boring. I'm like, I don't want it to be boring. So I brought on a friend of mine who I knew had a whole like life story, 70 some odd years old at the time. And I said, come to my office. Let's just do like an interview. I just want to tell your story and let me just interview you. And it turned out I was good at that. And his story was very interesting. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I think at the time there was like something came up about a movie. Remember you probably don't, but there's a movie called The Accidental Tourist, William Hurt, years ago.
Sounds so familiar.
It had nothing to do with what I'm doing, but just because of the name, I get a lot of people that come to me and they're just kind of in business by accident. They don't have a business plan and they're having trouble and they can't figure out why. And so that's how I came up with the name, The Accidental Entrepreneur. And there wasn't another there's some people, there's a book, I think somebody used that name or whatever. It's not trademarked, in the process of filing the trademark, but there's no podcast called The Accidental Entrepreneur. So I started that way and started just finding interesting people to interview, whether they work in the space or they support small business owners or they're small business owners themselves. And, it's a good way for me to approach people. If you have your own business and I wanted to meet you, I could be like, Sharon, let's get a cup of coffee. I'll talk about being your lawyer. You're like, I don't want to meet you. But if you want to be on the podcast, it's like people think it's like radio. They're all excited about it. So that's what I started. It was about 2 years ago. It took me probably 4 or 5 months to figure out like how to get this thing produced and how to get them into directories and how to edit it and all that type of stuff. And now it's pretty much, I have a system. It's all systematized. So
very cool.
Yeah. So it's my form of content marketing. I tell other attorneys, if you like to blog and write, do that. Great ebooks, great blog. You like the video, do video. You're doing this video thing. I like to do podcasting. So don't do something you don't like, though, because it's going to be painful if you don't. Just producing the content's just a nightmare if you don't enjoy what you do.
Yeah, and people will feel it too.
Yeah, and then you end up dropping what you're doing. Then people, they forget about you. So if you start something, you want to be committed to it. I've gotten to the point where I have 2 episodes a week and I'm booked through like December. I have episodes that are already recorded that I haven't edited. So if somebody's coming on the podcast, as long as they're okay coming out in January, then fine. Every once in a while, so you have like a book release, I'll sneak in earlier on, or an invention that you're releasing or something like that. But for the most part, I'm recorded, out. I have plenty of episodes. Keeping up with the editing, that's the problem.
Yeah.
In terms of producing this stuff. I don't know how you do the video. Video is even more work to edit than it is audio. Audio is easy.
I have help.
Yeah. Well, hopefully someday I'll have help. Right now, the podcast doesn't really make any money, so I haven't put a lot into it. I do a lot of it myself, but I have a little bit of help.
So tell me, how do you create a work-life balance with everything that you have going
on? That's a tough one. I mean, when you're a solopreneur, I don't care if you're a lawyer or you own a business, your business is your life, and you go home with your family and you got to put it down at some point. I mean, I turn my phone off at night. I'm not a brain surgeon. Nobody's going to call me and say, you got to be at the emergency room. There's just an accident. We need a lawyer. It's not going to happen in the middle of the night. So I try to do that and unplug. I'm not the kind of person who sits on their phone all night. But it's difficult because you want to be available to your clients these days. They think, especially during COVID, that you're available all the time. So they email you, text you, they find you. I mean, I have older attorneys who are friends of mine. They don't even want an email address because they feel that as soon as somebody sends an email, they expect a response back. And in the old days, they could probably wait a day to get back to somebody because they didn't have that expectation. So you have to remain plugged in regard to that. But I have some friends who have automated systems that as soon as you send them an email, they respond and say, I am in receipt of your email. Thanks so much for reaching out to me. I will get back to you within the next 12 to 24 hours. And I appreciate your patience. And, even if I'm emailing them, responding back to them about things, I get the automated message because they've decided to work virtual. There's some attorneys I know that work solely virtual. They can be on a beach somewhere and still do the work for their clients. And it's a practice that they've wanted to build. And that's how they've done it. And they use systems to do that. So in terms of staying in touch with your client, I think that there are ways that you can put in systems where you don't get overwhelmed. Like, for example, I think you set up this call, but if you had set up a Zoom chat with me or a phone call through my calendar system, it would take your email, it would add it to my list, and you would receive a series of, 4 or 5 emails over a period of weeks teaching you about my practice and telling you about what I do. Plus, then you're on my list for podcast releases and the business challenge and anything else that I put out. But that's all automated now. I don't have to remember to add you to, and there's exceptions to that. Like, I get on your calendar, so now I got to add you to mine. But there are systems that you can put in place to make it easier for you to run your practice so you can focus more on family time and not get overwhelmed with that stuff. So I recommend to attorneys getting started, look into an automated calendar, look into a mailing list. I like MailChimp because they let you put up to 2,000 entries for free to start, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. Look into other automated systems that you want to use. Google integrates very well, but so does Microsoft. So you can set up, even I guess you can do it on Microsoft too. You can schedule emails. So when I set up a podcast, I send a reminder the day before reminding you, Sharon, I just want to remind you that your podcast episode comes out tomorrow. Attached is a white sheet to promote the podcast if you don't already know how to do it. And, but I set that up weeks before. It's all set, scheduled to go 10 a.m. the day before. So there's a lot of ways you can automate things with certain tools, whether they're legal tools or they're just general tools. And I'm always looking for ways that people do that. I'm always looking for, how do you automate your practice? How do you automate your business? What services you're using? And everybody has their favorites, but over time, I've gone through different calendars. I like Calendly, which is the one I use, but there's a bunch of them. And I think that in terms of, if you don't enjoy your life and work is not enjoyable because they're going to be integrated, then you got to figure something else out, either a different way to practice or go do something else. There's no rule against that either, by the way. If you really hate practicing law, you have a law degree, go do something else. Go get another job. Go, it's not easy to make a transition, but you can do it. You just got to look into it.
Yeah.
Right? I think you'd agree with that.
Yeah, you can do anything you set your mind to. And you got to stand up for your own happiness because nobody else will.
That's for sure. And there's too many people that end up miserable their whole life and they look back and it's not about the end result. It's about the journey along the way. So that's why I made the change with the law practice. I just wasn't happy. And I can't say that it wasn't difficult to change and I didn't have the same kind of stress. Oh, I had different stress, but it still had stress. And if I knew I was going into coronavirus, that certainly didn't help anything. I just just kind of rebuilt the practice over a 4 or 5 month period, rebuilt my website, redone all this stuff, just getting going, hitting New Year's in January, which is a very slow time in law, right? I was going right in their will and drinking for Christmas time. So it's generally a slower time. And then this thing happened. So, it wasn't a good time to do everything, but there's never a good time. So if you're not happy, just change what you're doing, mix it up. That's what I tell people.
How do you are there any things that you do daily to help you manage stress, or are there any things that you do to help you manage stress when it's actually happening?
Yeah, I think if I, look at what I do and how I do it, I'm pretty good at managing stress. Like I've been down, I've been, starting the practice. I've had nothing. I didn't know where my next piece of business was going to come from, which is probably one thing that adds stress because I'm always like, worried about the next piece of business like we all are. But I try to keep things in perspective. I coach with certain people, keeping a perspective and a positive attitude. If it's an off week, look, for 2 or 3 months, I had no business coming in because all of my small business clients were closed. So during that time, I decided to get online with all these meetings. I probably attend 8 to 10 meetings a week, which you couldn't do without Corona if they weren't virtual. And I have all kinds of one-on-one chats, and I connect with people, and people are connecting me, and I'm what's the word, top of mind all the time. But I think in terms of managing stress, yeah, if I don't feel like I have enough clients, I kind of make a list of, well, what's all the things I'm doing to get the clients? Am I not doing something that I should be doing? Or maybe am I just like overreacting to something and I need to just take a deep breath and put it down for the day and go home? I've done that before too. Like it's just, I'm stressed out and I can't deal with this and this isn't going right. You just got to climb off the mountain for the day and just go home. I've done that before. And, the world is at peace at night. You go to sleep and you deal with it again in the morning. You'd be surprised what things solve themselves while you sleep. It's weird. It's funny. My dad has this rule. So he's been in sales all of his life since he was, in his 20s. And obviously the world's a different place, but he doesn't. So he works less now. He's in his 70s, he's retired, right? So he doesn't work Fridays and he works like Tuesdays or Thursdays. So he used to have this rule, and I guess he still does, that on a Monday, he would never come into the office before like lunchtime on a Monday, because he found out that most of the problems that happen on the weekend were either taken care of or solved themselves by the time half of Monday was over. So he didn't want to come in and have to deal with these issues and stress himself out. He would get in and then see the list, and the list was empty, or his secretary would be able to take care of most of the issues, So that was his rule, the way he handled with things. With me, I try and keep things in perspective. I don't try and react quickly to clients' requests or needs, or an email that I get about something. I kind of stew with it a little bit, and then half the time they do resolve themselves. They really do. I'll get an email and I won't look at it for a while, and then up the list, I get another email from you saying, Mitch, I figured out what I was looking for, and don't worry about it. It's taken care of. Okay. So I don't have to deal with them 9 times out of 10. I think that a lot of people, they overreact to whatever it is that's coming in. You just got to kind of take things calmly. That's what clients are relying on you to be, a calm person and to deal with things with a clear mind and to make good decisions. And I try to get clients not to overreact. So therefore I try not to overreact. And I think that's 9 times out of 10, that solves most of the problems. Because overreact, I always find worry, like my wife's can be a worrier. We have kids, so we worry. Worrying is like the worst emotion that was ever invented by mankind, right? It doesn't make things worse and it doesn't make things better. Well, it may make you physically worse, but it doesn't make the situation worse and it doesn't make it better. Whatever the outcome's going to be, if you focus on it, is what it's going to be. So worrying is just a waste of time. Just focus on the problem and see what the issue is and how you're going to fix it. And that's that. I'm big on that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean I don't worry, but I try not to.
I think
shake
that's
it
great
off.
advice.
Yeah. Worrying is a waste of energy.
Yeah, it is, because it doesn't help you actually create a solution. It's just focusing on the past, which
Makes
is
it worse the other way around. Negative energy, right?
Yeah.
You're probably missing whatever the solution is.
Yeah.
Because you're so worried about what could happen, probably doesn't 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Usually what we worry about doesn't happen. It really is most of the case. And even if it does, you still got to deal with it. So worrying about it's not going to help you. So just focus on, how do you solve the problem? How do you make it go away? How do you make the problem become an opportunity? I don't know. And I know some people that are very good at that. I mean, they run into problems and they solve them, and they say, what can I do here? How can I make this to my advantage or to my client's advantage, whatever. And then there's other people that just get paralyzed in life. They should not be practicing on their own, by the way. People that get paralyzed. Yeah, go get a job.
It's all about your thought patterns and how you just change them, and it's a habit more than anything else. Those people that are great at problem solving, they may not have always been great at problem solving. It's something that they learn to do.
Yeah, and that's why. And I know it's a vast industry, but there's all kinds of coaches out there that coach for different things and help people. And a lot of people are like, what do I need a coach for? Well, if you don't have the right mindset for things, and you're not focusing on the right things, and you're not staying organized or whatever, maybe you do need a coach because you're on your own. You don't have a partner to bounce things off of, or maybe they're not the right person to bounce things off of. And I think that we try to do too much on our own and thinking we can do it, and we can't. So like you said, these people can help you learn the skill. It's like going to the gym, right? So you work with a trainer in order to get yourself in a habit of doing things a certain way. Of course, then Corona hits and your gym shuts down, and for 4 months you can't work out except go for walks or run through your neighborhood. But it definitely, there's a lot of learned habits, and if you do them, and somebody keeps you accountable to do them, it gets easier, not so scary.
For sure.
Yeah.
What do you think is some of the best advice you've ever gotten?
Some of the best advice I've ever gotten. Well, I've gotten different advice for different things. One was somebody gave me a book once about kind of keeping in touch with people. It was called The Referral of a Lifetime. I don't even remember to the day who gave it to me. I could probably name a half a dozen people that it might be, but I don't know who really gave me the book. But it's about keeping in touch with the people that you do business with, right? It's from a business standpoint. So in terms of focusing on building a network, a centers of influence, things like that, that was probably, from a business standpoint, the best advice I got. Building systems to keep in touch with people, to build people that, know you, remember you, use your services, use you as a resource, consider you a friend, all those types of things. On the other side of it, other advice I've gotten over the years, somebody once told me that when something is like your first time, I think Brene Brown calls it like an FFT, like your first effing time. That's what she calls it. So there's a lot to be said for the first time you do something and having expectations that are kind of in line with where the whole thing is coming from. So I think, I interview a lot of people right through the podcast, all kinds. I mean, I've interviewed habit scientists, I've interviewed coaches and business consultants, and a guy who does like energy consulting, all kinds of stuff, and business owners and everything. And I found that consciousness and awareness of like what we're doing and how we're doing it and what's bothering us in the first time that we do things is like 90% of the key to everything that we do, right? Because you don't realize how you're treating people, how you're talking to your spouse, how you're treating your kids, how your work stress is affecting you, because you're not conscious of it, right? So becoming conscious of it has a lot to do with coaching and working with people, everything, right? But if it's the first time you're dealing with that particular thing, and again, I don't remember the person who gave me this advice. I could name probably a dozen. If you come to it and say, yeah, this is the first time I'm dealing with this thing, so the second time will be easier because I'll be more familiar with this and that, I think you deal with things from a very lower levels, like a lower stress level. And that's kind of how I deal with things. So if it's the first time and I'm like, oh my God, this is not going well, I get this voice in my head that says, well, of course it's not going well. It's the first time you're dealing with it. You have no familiarity with whatever it is that you're dealing with. It's the first, court case that you've dealt with in court. And no wonder you feel like an idiot in front of the judge because you've only been here once. It's the first eviction you've ever done. You don't have any idea what you're doing. So go up and act like an idiot and take, the forms you need and figure it out. And then the next time it's easier. And if you go with approaches from that, whoever taught me to do that, you're just not expecting a lot. Like you're expecting it to suck. It's going to be difficult. You're going to screw up. That's what you expected. So that's probably the best advice that I've ever gotten when it comes to dealing with all kinds of situations. If you don't expect a lot the first time, second time will be better. Third time will be easier. After that, you'll be an expert at whatever it is you do. Same with the podcast. I was nervous talking on the mic for the first time. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
But yeah, nervous to hear my voice, nervous to what other people are going to say. but I just did, I did it. I said, okay, well, so they think I'm an idiot. Whatever. I talked to a kid the other day I interviewed who is a kid. He's in his 30s and he's got this company, all kinds of stories about injuries and illnesses. He built up this company. But he said that he went out to, raise money, like through angel investors or whatever. And so he went to all these pitch contests and he said, you know what? I know I'm not going to win this contest. I'm probably not going to win 10 contests. And I'm going to these things. I'm going to get torn apart. I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make presentations. I'm going to learn. He later ended up on a crowdfunding site, and he was the first African-American to raise, like, at least on their site, more than $1 million crowdfunding. And he's gotten VCs, and he's now in an accelerator. And because he went out to break whatever he was doing wrong, right? To learn from failure, to learn from criticism. And if you go with that attitude, he was okay. He didn't expect to do well. He wasn't frustrated. He wasn't winning the contest. He was like, I'm going to learn. After 10, I'll probably be good enough, and I will. And he did. And that's exactly what happened. So I think if we approach things that way with anything we do in life, we would take a lot of the air out of the balloon that we're so nervous about, oh, we got to work this out. Nobody expects you to do that. So, like practicing law.
Yeah.
You're going to get yelled at and you're going to screw up. So do it early on, expect that to happen. So
I think that's really good advice. It's also, you're also a little more loving to yourself when that happens, and
forgiving of yourself.
Yeah, and your ego is less wounded when things don't turn out that you expected. But it's just like, I think Tony Robbins gives this example. If your kid doesn't stand up the first couple of times, you're not going to be like, oh, well, they're not a walker.
Right, exactly. Well, I guess that ain't going to work. I mean, you're just not going to do that. And I think you're right. I think if you take that approach, I don't have any ego about doing things and failing to do them. It's just not, and maybe because now I'm in my 50s and I've had life experience, but like, so what? Right? Like, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, you're going to try this, right? And you're going to put yourself out there and people are going to boo you and they boo, you suck, right? That's the worst that can happen. And by the way, that is not going to happen, right? Because everybody who's watching you give your presentation, for example, is just thanking God that they're not up there giving the presentation, right? It's like, what do they say about a eulogy? Like you're more likely to want to be in the casket than giving the eulogy because people don't like public speaking. That's usually what they're thinking about, or they got something going on in their life that they're not like going to boot. It's not going to happen. So all of the anxiety that we create, if you go in not expecting, I'm not saying don't have goals and, achieve things, but if it's the first time you're doing it, it's okay to not be the best at it because, I don't know. What does Tony Robbins say? Like, if you strive for excellence, you'll be great. If you strive for greatness, you'll be good. If you strive to be good, you'll be fair. So, do the best you can, knowing that first time, probably not going to be excellent. You may never get to excellence. So what? You mix it up. But I think you're right. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to, like, especially as lawyers. Oh my God, you're a lawyer. You went to law school. You graduated. You're really smart. Everybody thinks that. And, in business situations, I got lawyers that get involved in doing a contract, for example, a business agreement. 4 months, 6 months later, they still don't have an agreement because they're just trying to convince the client how smart they are. Like, I don't care. Like, so let's just get this done for the client, move them on, and get a good result. Does the I don't litigate, but does the complaint that you submit to a judge have to be perfect? Are you going to get a different result if it's a good, well thought out complaint, not written the best it could possibly be? I'm not sure what that is anyway. And the good litigators I know get the job done. They get it into court because they're going to be arguing the thing anyway. What does it matter? And just get the work done. So I think we do get caught up with feeling we got to be perfect all the time.
One of the best advice that I've gotten, it's from one of my mentors and a coach. She says, done is better than perfect.
You're correct, because perfect and not done is worthless. And I do know, and I'm sure you do know people too, they just go in circles and they can't get it done. I'm writing a book, for example. I'm working on a book. That's where the whole thing about getting sued by anyone and everyone, my friend does like a book series, like 10 ways to do this, 10 ways to do that. So he said, you want to write a book? I said, no, I hate writing books. I'm going to shoot myself before I write a book. He said, well, we'll co-author it together and I'll help you get it done. I said, okay, we'll do one of your series. But having said that, it's like, I do want to shoot myself. I mean, it's like pulling teeth. So without him, I would never get it done. It's not something I can do on my own. I'm just not capable of doing it. So, sometimes you got to figure a way around doing it. And now we're bringing in co-authors to get other chapters done. So I'm like, good. I don't need to be the one voice of the whole thing. So,
Yep, you're seeking help.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, don't ever want to do it on your own. I don't do anything on my own. I call a colleague. I ask them what they think. Do they have a contract form? People ask me for stuff all the time. You don't have to know it yourself. That's the one secret of law, is that you don't need to know anything. Pennsylvania, actually, if you take the bar in Pennsylvania, you enter, at least when I was taken 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you didn't have to be right about the law, because they figured, well, you're going to look the law up anyway. So you could state that the penal code of Pennsylvania says this, this, and this. As long as you argue based on the law that you stated, they didn't care that it was wrong.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that.
It's a really cool antidote. Mitch, as we close this out, I want to know from you, what is something that you wish for the future of the practice of law?
I wish a couple of things. One is that I hope that, lawyers learn to be more accessible, that we become more technologically savvy. I guess that'll take generations, but we probably jump 10 years with this whole COVID thing. And that, there won't be, we can get rid of the mystery of law, that more accessible. Because like, as a business owner, a small business owner, law is more and more and more inaccessible. It's more expensive to deal with the courts, and I see some of the stuff going on where people will do partial retainers. They'll just do the complaint for you, and then you can go to court and charge you a partial fee. They call that, I forget what they call it, but limited scope retainers or something like that. So that's one thing. I also I'd love to see, I know this is never going to happen, there really should be a national bar, right? Attorneys should be able to pass a national bar, and they could practice anywhere in the country, because you're going to learn the local laws wherever you practice anyway. You're going to look that up. You're going to take maybe you have continuing legal education requirements in the state in which you practice, but it shouldn't be, we're the only profession where you can't practice in other parts of the country. I, for example, do a lot of business consulting to business owners. I help them with agreements all over the country. Now, I don't represent them. If there's a legal issue that comes up that's local, I'll find them counsel. We do federal tax planning. Got to have a local lawyer. But if you're a patent attorney, there's a national patent bar, right? You can practice all over the country. But if you are in New Jersey, and up until several years ago, by the way, you couldn't waive in anywhere, you're like stuck here, like trapped in New Jersey looking for your business, and you can't do business other parts. If you're a CPA, you can do federal work in any state in the country. Actually, you can do state filings too, if you have a client that works all over the place. So it's not fair. It's not the way the legal profession should be. Like, it's a separated thing. And I know laws vary from state to state. It doesn't matter. You look that up anyway. So that's where, if the legal profession wants to really transform itself, that's what it should be looking at. But I really think there should be a national bar exam, and not so many barriers to entry to practice between the states. I understand between countries, right? But the United States, right? You should be practicing in the United States, a member of the United States Bar Association, the American Bar Association, the American Bar, right? I'm a member of the New Jersey Bar. I could waive in other states. I got to pay more money. I got to go through all kinds of proctological examinations. I don't know, to become, you know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous. And it doesn't make you a better lawyer, right? So you move to New Jersey, you pass the bar. You know what you know about New Jersey law? Very little. You really don't. So it's just a stupid system. I'm sure I'll get criticized for that, but whatever.
It's your opinion. You're welcome to have it. Was there anything else that you wished for the future of the practice of law?
No, I mean, I hope that we start teaching our lawyers how to be business people. I think that'll help with the success and the future of the business. I still think it's a good education if you're looking to get into business, know the law. But having said that, I deal with more attorneys who are going to business or do business deals, and they're so screwed up. It's because they think they're lawyers, and they're like, oh, I could do this. And they screw it up because they don't do it for full time, for a living. So, but yeah, definitely business curriculum. Like the law to start having business curriculums, I think that would be really great. But, some will do that. The ones that have to compete will do that. Harvard won't. All the top law schools won't.
Yeah, some schools are starting to do that. So
yeah, I see that they are starting to do that, but that's because of the nature of the practice. It's changed so much, and people are practicing on their own, and they have to learn how to develop business and sell and market. And, that's why it comes down. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Mitch, thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of the Inspired Attorney.
I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you for watching. I'm sure you were able to gain some invaluable insights from the conversation I shared with Mitch. Please be sure to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube so you can be notified when the next episode of The Inspired Attorney is released, and also so you can gain access to the weekly videos I share on mindset and different things that can help you in your practice. If you are following me on YouTube, please be sure to hit the little bell so you do get the notifications when new content is released. And since I am an attorney who is now a life and business strategist, my focus is helping attorneys find their passion and strategically pivot in order to maximize their firm's overall profitability. So if you are seeking further strategic advice, do reach out to me. That is what I'm here for. I'm here to help you love what you do and be more successful at doing it. So reach out to me if that is something that you're seeking. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy the content, and I will talk to you on the next video.